So one of the things I was talking about with you guys in the Discord, and one of the things that's just kind of been on my mind, and I wish, if anybody in here is like a PvP main or anything like that, or someone who's been in the crowd of like, Bungie doesn't listen when it comes to PvP. Like, I'd love to just sit down and just talk with somebody. And one of the things I'd really want to know is within the last year, given all of what PvP has gotten, right? What has PvP not gotten that you feel like Bungie's neglecting? Now, before you say maps, because that's like the go-to maps, I'm with you on that. Like me, I'd love to see maps in Gambit. I'd love to see maps in PvP. This is one of the gripes when it comes to the state of the game, right? Is their discussion around resources and stuff like that. But like I said, we'll get to it. But I specifically just wanted to focus on this part because, and especially if you look around the community, the kind of mood around the community, a lot of people are saying the same things. PvP's been ignored. It's been ignored. It's been ignored, right? But when you look at this list of like things that PvP has gotten, right? Aside from the things people want, but look at what it's gotten. Because I know for certain, I've heard people talk about lobby balancing, matchmaking, SBMM being, ass and stuff like that. It hasn't been neglected. It's been continued to be worked on. Now, has the stuff that's come out been to people's liking? No, but that doesn't mean it's not being worked on. You know what I mean? The other side of it is, in terms of like, they're not adding anything, there's no focus on it. We got a whole comp mode added to the game. Now, do people like comp? They have gripes with it, of course, right? But we have comp, right? When it first dropped, it was like, oh, there's no rewards. There's no reason for me to play. There are rewards. Rose was a really good reward. A lot of even PvP players would admit Rose is one of the best hand cannons in the game. That came from comp. The sniper we got this season, Mercurial Overreach, I think it's called, one of the best snipers in the game. That comes from comp, right? And I think they teased that there's going to be a pulse rifle coming, a Strand Pulse, in season 23 for comp. Might be one of the best pulses in the game. We've gotten top tier weapons from comp. Is comp perfect? No, that's not what I'm saying. But we have comp and it's there to be improved upon. You know what I mean? But in its base form right now, my biggest gripe with comp is the matchmaking, right? It is the solo experience. And these are things, again, they're not being neglected. They're being worked on. Are the updates to people's liking? No. The point I'm trying to make is it's not neglected. It's getting updates. Another thing they mentioned is PvP specific weapon tuning. We've got a bunch of PvP weapon tuning. The sandbox has been tweaked so much. We're getting a big range adjustment coming next season that I've been saying so many times is going to shake up the game. The way you look at perks right now is not how you're going to be looking at perks next season. That's one of the biggest changes coming. That's a PvP focused sandbox change. They mentioned a revamp to trial, right? The reward system, matchmaking, right? Now I can say as a solo player, because I play most of these PvP playlists solo, as a solo player, the experience definitely needs some more fine tuning, right? The solo matchmaking experience needs more tuning. A lot of players, I think, would agree that queuing with two people is probably like the best feeling way to jump into trials. So obviously there's still more work to be done there in terms of matchmaking, right? But again, not neglected. It's being worked on. It was implemented. It's also being discussed. And it's like, my thing is when it comes to neglect, it's like if you give feedback and you say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing, right? This is what I don't like. And let's say I'm a developer and I'm like, okay, cool. You're not enjoying this experience. We clearly need to make a change. And then we come up with another change and you go, you're not listening. This is not what I need, right? This is not improving my experience. It's like on my side as a developer, I'm sitting there going, I know you're not enjoying what you're experiencing. We're trying to get it to where you want to enjoy it. But nothing that you're saying can be put into code. You understand what I'm saying? Like you have to balance things. Things have to be swayed in one way or the other. And then you kind of measure out. You see like, okay, people like this, they don't like this. You gauge kind of the mood around it. That's how it works. You know what I mean? There's no such thing as PvP matchmaking sucks. Okay, PvP matchmaking sucks. Let me type that into the code. Okay, now it's good. It doesn't work like that, right? So it's a process. That's what I'm trying to say. So when people equate you know, their anger to Bungie's not doing anything, that's where I have a problem with the whole conversation, because there's more nuance to it. You know what I mean? Now, again, as I say, there's more nuance. People say, you know, we've been asking for these things for years and, you know, this and the third. Again, I'm not negating anybody's argument, not negating anybody's point. There's a lot of valid points when it comes to that. There's plenty of times where there's things that have been asked for and they've not been, you know, responded to or seemingly heard or whatever the case is. So there's truth in all of that stuff. But what I'm saying is also true. You know what I mean? And again, I only speak about things from experience because I experience this on a daily basis. I experience users saying, hey, this sucks, that sucks, this sucks, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. And I have to improve things. And I have to work with angry people all day. People who want things like that done. And it doesn't work like that. You know? It's the same conversation around, you know, destiny and money. Now there's two sides of this because, you know, we'll get to that later, but you can't say, oh, we pay for this and we pay for that. Why does this not work? Because the same argument stands. When somebody comes to me, because I've had people say, you make all this money and you can't make it work, my paycheck does not fix your problem. It's just the truth. You know what I mean? It's just the truth. Like, if I could take my money and throw it at your problems and fix it, I mean, well, shit, that'd be great. But it doesn't work like that. You know? You could buy all the Eververse skins you want to, but it's not gonna fix matchmaking. You know what I mean? You could say that we pay all this money, but it's not gonna fix matchmaking. You still gotta go through the process, no matter how much you pay. And that's just the truth. Now, again, just to kind of bring it back, neglect. Neglect means nothing's being done. But as we realistically just take a step back and just look at this last year, from the time they mentioned Lightfall and the year ahead to now, I'd say things have been done. Are they to everyone's liking, even my liking? No. But they're not neglected. And that's just the point I'm trying to drive home, right? Because when I see the community engaging in conversations and they're saying like I don't even know the proper word to use without just trying to be blatantly disrespectful, because I'm not trying to disrespect anybody. But when I see people just make blanket statements, it's just like, you're clearly just doing that to get a rile out of people, because you know people are frustrated. You know what I'm saying? And people have a right to feel frustrated, as I've said many times since I've been talking, right? So anyway, they talk about all the stuff that they've worked on, you know, throughout this year to this point, and then they go on to, you know, further discuss, you know, some of the things that they have coming up. So they talk about maps. And they talk about the map that they have coming out, right? We have a Vex theme map that's going to be like a mixture of Mars. And they discuss some of the reasons behind it not just purely being like a Vex theme map, because, you know, you need to be able to differentiate players in the background and, you know, a lot of stuff tied to like the artistic design of the game. And that makes sense. I have no arguments there. You got reasons like that? Cool. I just enjoy the fact that we're getting a new map. Now, on the subject of maps, because this is one of the parts that really annoyed a lot of people. So Bungie talks about why they're not able to make more maps. They mentioned that they know that the most frequent feedback is that there's not enough new PvP content, specifically maps. And they try to set expectations for people, saying that, you know, the studio structure, I'm gonna just read it straight from the article, but they said the studio structure is built to support more overarching updates to PvP, like the ones that they mentioned above, which is the ones we just talked about that they've done from, you know, this entire year, all the stuff we mentioned previously. Right, so it's structured in a way to focus on those kind of updates rather than focusing exclusively on maps, right? And they mentioned that when they do focus their resources on building new Crucible maps, it comes with a trade-off where multiple teams' bandwidth on work that contributes to a variety of experiences that players also hold dear, like new stories, exotic mission content, core activities that make up the foundation for seasons, so seasonal activities, destination activities. They mentioned that when they want to work on new maps, it basically will pull resources from all these other things that allow the game to function on a day-to-day basis, right? The more, basically think of it like a priority list. Like, these are the things that will keep the game running season after season, day after day. And right now, the way that their team structure is set up, it's mainly focused on that. So they don't have the physical resources to work on making maps. Because I know a lot of people say like money, like we pay you money, make more maps. Now, the way money comes into it is how I'm going to put it to you like this. Because it sounds like to me that Bungie stretched thin. And when you think back to when Bungie was with Activision, right? And we had other studios, like I think it was High Moon Studios working on DLCs and stuff like that. They outsourced, right? And I'm pretty sure they outsource now for certain things. But when it comes to managing a game as big as this is, and you have to remember too, a big part of the development is not just the day-to-day, the systems, the art, the design, making all the new content. It's a lot. But it's not just that. Obviously they have Marathon, so they've split their teams, right? They have Matter, which they're still working on, so they've split their teams, right? Like Sox was mentioning in the Discord, they also were bought up by Bungie, so what did I just say? They were bought up by Bungie? I just merged Sony and Bungie. They were bought by Sony. So basically, we're assuming they have people working, with other studios on live service games and stuff like that. So it seems like Bungie stretched thin. So when I see a statement like that, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, okay, where money comes into play for me is, okay, Bungie, you are making money from microtransactions. You're clearly making money off of this game. Is there any possibility to outsource something like making maps to another studio, smaller studio, or any development team that is not your own? You, like Sony is, backing you now. Is there no way that you can get assistance from other Sony studios the same way they're seeking assistance from you in terms of like live service games? Like, that's the part for me. It gets my brain going because I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Now, maps are part of the game. Like, we've been playing Destiny for years and we've always gotten new maps on a certain cadence. And it's like all of a sudden it stopped. And your reasoning is basically you don't want to pull resources from main aspects of the game to make maps. And I get that. Like, for me, right? And I'll give a scenario like this because this is a real world scenario. I'm on a team of network engineers who manages a network, and that entails a lot of stuff. Manages a network for buildings across the city. 3 people to manage buildings across the city. Multiple systems, multiple levels of things that need to be managed. And then somebody comes like, oh, but why can't you put focus on this? And I'm just sitting there going, bro, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta make sure everything works. Like, I can't do all of this, right? That's the scenario that I'm picturing for the devs. It's like, realistically, it sounds like they can't do it, not because they don't want to, but because they can't. Because if they literally pull people from the other stuff, then you're gonna see it, you're gonna feel it. You're gonna feel the pullback in the other areas. And all that says to me is they don't have the proper staffing to support for things like this, because maps are absolutely something that should be coming to the game on somewhat of a regular basis. I'm not saying every season. I'm not even saying every other season, but every DLC launch. You know what I'm saying? Every year we pay for a DLC, every DLC launch. That's what I'm saying. Like a yearly basis, we can't get like 2 new PvP maps. And I'm not saying it to say like, it's so easy, make a PvP map. No, but if you can find the resources, like I said, from another Sony studio, right? Or outsource to another studio, 2 PvP maps. You know what I mean? I feel like that's a bare minimum that's not out of the realm. That's not crazy to ask for. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying give me a new PvP map every season. No, but every year, I think we should be able to get to a point where that is okay to expect. You know what I'm saying? Like, this part of it to me was kind of like, all right, I don't know about that, because again, a lot of people brought up Eververse microtransactions, and that's a valid argument. You know what I mean? No matter where you fall on the fence with microtransactions, that's a valid argument, because Bungie also mentions in the article about not being able to make vendor armor on a regular basis. And like I said, I don't really care about vendor armor. It doesn't drop with high stats. It's not something that you need to chase. You know what I'm saying? It's not something that anybody's ever in their life grinded for. Maybe a new player who didn't know any better, but you know. But I've never heard of someone going and grinding the strike playlist for strike armor or PvP. You know what I mean? You just scrap it. It just becomes material. So it's like, okay, I'm cool with you not making it. But they mentioned before, years ago, they would have a yearly refresh of vendor armors. Okay, cool, you can't do that. Assuming that ornaments are a little bit easier to make than armor, because armor is tied to stats and all these other systems. Assuming that ornaments are a little bit easier to make, is it safe to assume that we can't get armor ornaments instead? Because again, all of this ties back to Eververse. Because you can make brand new Eververse items every single season. Every single event, we get brand new Eververse items. But we can't get new yearly ornaments at the least. We can't get two new PvP maps at the least. I think that's reasonable, right? I don't think that's crazy to ask for or anything like that. And again, I've acknowledged what they mentioned, but I'm just saying, is there no possible way at all to outsource, to get help with making these things? Because as they mentioned, they got to focus on the main thing. So clearly these are smaller focus items. Is outsourcing, not an option or anything like that? I'm trying to think of solutions, right? Because this is clearly an issue, and it's not an issue for no reason, because these are things that we've had. These are expectations that players have had. And now it's like, I'm just asking for the bare minimum. It's like, just to make it a thing that we can look forward to. That's my main issue with this whole thing, is the whole resources thing, because I do see that there is a solution for that. There is. But it's just a matter of how they want to go about it, and if they're willing to, because that's just going to be the truth at the end of the day. Because just saying that it's not possible is just not true. You know what I mean? That's just not true. Like, see, I'm not even, so like, you make a great point too, because that's another thing, right? A lot of people don't know how to make, because coding in a live service game is a totally different beast. You're not making content in a static game. You're making content in a game that's in motion, meaning there's constantly moving parts everywhere. So it's not like, oh, you just copy paste a map and then boom, it's in the game. Like, it doesn't work like that. Like, this map has to literally, think about this, chat. I'm gonna break this down for you real quick. The map and everything on the map and every aspect of the art design of the map has to interact with every single system in Destiny 2. That means player physics, gun physics, abilities, all that stuff. People don't think about that stuff. It has to interact with everything. You're not just putting a blank canvas in the game, a painted canvas in the game going, oh, look, map. It's not how it works. You know what I mean? So there's definitely a lot more behind putting a map in the game. And again, I get that. You know what I mean? But getting more people on the team definitely seems like the direction Bungie needs to move in, because it sounds like they don't have enough people to make this stuff happen. And what they're saying is what I would be saying in any instance. Like, look, I know what you're asking me for. Like, listen, we've all been there, right? Like, somebody comes to you and they ask you for some shit, and you're looking at your work stack, and you're like, bro, you see all this stuff I got in the bag? Okay, then. Okay, then. You know what I mean? And it kind of feels like Bungie's saying that in a way. It's like, yeah, we know what you're asking for, but like, you see all this stuff that we talking about that we're working on? Yeah. So it's like, okay, let's assume. I hear you, Bungie. Absolutely. You're a big company. I'm pretty sure you have money. Is it possible that we can hire more people? Because I'm pretty sure they're always posting for more people to hire. They're always having their job openings, or whatever. Like, I applied to be a knock. I don't even know if I want to be a knock, because if they mention a knock in the article about the security team, that would be me. I don't want y'all yelling at me and shit. Like, you know what I mean? I flipped the wrong switch, fucked some shit up, and then I got people in my DMs talking about, God damn it, Steve, why? I don't need that. I don't need that, chat. I don't need that. You know what I mean? So they do mention, so some of the positives. Let's get to some positives. They have a new mode called Checkmate and another new mode called Relic. So yeah, Checkmate's going to be available in Crucible Labs, like they mentioned, from week 5 to week 10. It's going to start off with Checkmate Control. It's going to then switch up to Checkmate Survival. And then there's going to be 2 weeks of Checkmate Rumble, right? And basically Checkmate is a modifier where primary weapon fights are supposed to be a lot richer. How that's happening is this part right here. So they say, I'll just read it for you guys. But primary weapon damage is going to be tuned to feel different than the rest of the game without being jarring, reducing the gap between the faster killing weapons and the average time to kill. And in general, pushing longer range primaries into slower killing profiles. Player health has been increased, all ability cooldowns are lengthened, and special ammunition must be earned via gameplay and is not dropped on death. This all results in slightly longer combat encounters that reward skill and consistency. So essentially, think of a mode where the time to kill is going to be longer. You're going to have less abilities, less special ammo. So it's going to really prioritize primary ammo fights. And it's really going to prioritize being able to hit your crits. If you can't hit crits, you're going to be in some long gunfights. So I can already see how some people might not like how it launches, but I can see where this mode could really push you into primary gunfights and could be pretty fun for people just looking for this kind of game mode where it's just primarily primary gunfights, occasionally, special ammo fights because you get the reward from getting the kills. So I could see the potential for this mode. So this is definitely going to be one that we're going to try out. This is one that I'm actually looking forward to. And who knows, maybe something like this could be used in a more competitive setting after it gets refined. So it is going to launch in Crucible Labs, but I think this one has potential. The next one is Relic. And this one just sounds fun as hell. So we have Team Scorched, best mode in the game, right? I suck at it. I suck at it, but that's a different story for a different time. But we have Team Scorched and we have Mayhem, right? So you have a mode where supers pop off like crazy. You have a mode where you just blowing shit up. Now we're gonna have a mode where you basically get to use all these crazy relics that we've had over the years. They mentioned it right here. So Relic is gonna be a 6v6 party mode where players wreak havoc and destruction of their foes with relic weapons. Relics will include the Aegis from Vault of Glass, the Synaptic Spear from Season of the Risen, and the Scythe from Season of the Haunted. Now this is the cool part. So each player is going to charge their personal relic energy by defeating opponents with their normal loadouts. Upon reaching full charge, players will acquire a relic from a relic depot. Defeating relic holders and using the relics to defeat opponents earn points for the team. This, I think, is going to be a really fun mode. And I think it's going to create a nice trio of, pretty fun party modes where you're going to have Mayhem, you're going to have Team Scorch, and then you have Relic. I think that's a nice, healthy, party mix. And I like the fact they added another party type mode. You know what I mean? Because we have control, we have survival, we have the gunplay modes. It's nice to have those fun modes where you can just go in and just, mess around and just, blow stuff up and just do crazy things. I think that's where Destiny really shines when they allow you to have fun in the sandbox. That's where it really matters. And it really emphasizes when the sandbox is, tight, the gunplay and the skill of using your abilities in the other PvP modes. But there needs to be that differentiation. You know what I mean? 6v6 should not feel like Mayhem. Just saying. But they talk about some matchmaking improvements. So more, like I mentioned earlier, about the whole neglect thing and what's being done. So they mentioned again, skill-based matchmaking. Going to be getting some more adjustments in the next season. Yeah, and this is going to apply to Control and Iron Banner. And they said the goal of this is to improve matchmaking times and experiences for players who find themselves at the upper and lower end of the skill spectrums, and for those in low population regions or times. So this is going to really help those people who have really long matchmaking queues. I haven't personally experienced long matchmaking queues, but that's just me, obviously. but I know I have experienced some really wild teams that I've been on, and yeah, it feels very inconsistent. But you know, matchmaking is that thing where it's like it's not going to be perfect. And I feel like the one thing I will say on this is if you have the expectation that every match is supposed to be to your liking, then I don't think matchmaking is ever going to work for you. But matchmaking should be somewhat of a mix of stomping people, getting stomped, really close matches. You know what I mean? Like, it should be a fair balance of that. But if I am getting on and I'm just getting stomped, or if I'm getting, I mean, that just might mean that I suck, but you know, not pointing fingers, but it's a possibility. We got to be true here. But you know, it could be something to be looked at. Or if you're just stomping people, it can mean that you're just really good. It could also just mean matchmaking needs to be looked at. But I feel like, you know, it needs to be somewhere in the middle. Like if you're an elite player, you should get your ass kicked sometimes. If you're a lower skill player, you should be able to dominate sometimes and get your ass kicked. You know what I mean? Like, it's balance. Balance. So a lot of that stuff is coming in season 22. They talk about stuff coming in season 23, right? So they talk about delivering a new Iron Banner mode for season 23. So what do we have now for Iron Banner? We have Iron Banner Control, where you get the cap points and get the lockdowns. We have Iron Banner Eruption, which I'm a fan of. They mentioned, this is what I mentioned earlier, we're going to be getting a new Hake Aggressive Frame Strand Pulse Rifle. That's going to be the new competitive division reward. So again, neglect, because again, Comp has had some of the best PvP weapons in the sandbox. Rose, one of the best hand cannons in the game. Mercurial Overreach, one of the best snipers in the game. This new aggressive frame strand pulse rifle, we'll see. Matchmaking in comp is my biggest gripe. But again, matchmaking, work in progress. So we're getting a reprised PvP map also in season 23. That's gonna be the Citadel. I don't know how many people remember Citadel. That was the one on the Dreaming City. The Vanguard stuff is a little bit shorter than the rest of the stuff. What they mentioned here is that one, the Vanguard playlist is currently in a solid place with a healthy population. I am very curious about that, because is that because people are running strikes a lot? Or is that purely because of GMs and nightfalls? You know what I mean? Where is the statistics weighted toward? You know what I mean? Like, how are you looking at the stats for the health of the Vanguard playlist? Because I don't think that's an accurate metric to just say it has a healthy population, to mean that it doesn't really need much help. Because I think there's a couple things we can point to with the Vanguard playlist, like strike-specific loot. I'll take strike-specific armor as ornaments, specifically armor ornaments of the bosses, different pieces. Remember the Brothers strike in D1, where you could get that armor piece, a la cool, you can get the helmet, right? I mentioned it earlier about ornaments. We don't need armor. I don't want to grind for low stat armor. I don't need that. Make it a really, really low drop rate, right? You can go crazy low. I don't give a shit. Because remember, context, these are core activities. These are meant to be played as the core aspect of the game. You're not supposed to grind the shit out of these. These are not, you know, this is not a raid where you're trying to grind for it. This is just an activity you play in passing. And the intention is you'll play it in passing, and it'll be a nice surprise if you get it. Now, obviously, that's not how it's gonna work out. The moment you say there's strike-specific loot, people are going to play day and night without sleeping and eating and quitting their day jobs to get that helmet. And then they're gonna blame Bungie about the drop rates. Like, why does this suck? When the intention is likely gonna be, hey, this is just supposed to be a nice surprise. This is not supposed to be, you don't need this for endgame. Hence why I said, doesn't need to be armor with stats, just an ornament. It's just a cosmetic. And more cosmetics, right? When strike-specific loot, meaning, think about Eververse items that we got that are Hive-themed. The ornament for Witherhoard that's Hive-themed. Imagine if I got the ornament for Witherhoard from doing the Lightblade strike. Stuff like that is what I'm talking about. That will get me to invest in these playlists. You see what I'm saying? I will play strikes, not grind strike. I will play strikes. I feel like that's doable. You know what I mean? I don't feel like that's toxic to ask for. I feel like that's okay. You know what I mean? It should be okay to say like, hey, Bungie, can we have something like this? You know, because we see that you're able to make this, it's in the game, but can we just move some of it over here to kind of uplift the playlist that you said in your state of the game that you want to enrich? I'm trying to help you. Solutions. Let's enrich the playlist. You know what I mean? This is a way that we can do that. So a way that they're planning, just to kind of move this thing forward, a way that they're planning to enrich the Vanguard playlist is they're going to be adding Vanguard medals. I'm a fan of this. They tested it out in, what was it, Guardian Games? Yeah, they tested it out in Guardian Games. I was like, dude, it's practically in the game. Just add it to the playlist. And that's literally what they did. I think I literally have a tweet saying, Bungie, add medals in the game. And they literally just added, not because of me, but they literally just added medals into the playlist. I think this is a positive. This is good, because my thing is, a part of core activities that's missing for me is the fun aspect. Core activities should not feel grindy. Strikes should not feel grindy, right? Nightfall should not even feel grindy. They should be challenging. That's a difference. But it shouldn't feel grindy. It should feel fun, right? And medals is just one way to make the playlist feel a little bit more fun. And hopefully they build on top of it. I know people are going to be like, well, what do I get for getting all the medals? You get a medal, bro. You just get a medal. You get medals. You can collect all the medals. Just get all the medals. Just rank up all the medals. That's it. It's just supposed to be fun. And that's all it should be, right? The only thing that you should get from doing strikes is your weekly reward and whatever the weapons are that they put into the playlist, and, you know, whatever you can focus at, you know, whatever vendor. That's it. They don't need to do much. Outside of strike loot, like we mentioned, that's it. There's nothing that they need to do to make the playlist grindy. Just fun. And now we get to this part, chat. We get to Gambit. I'm just going to say it off the bat, just being honest for a second. And I've seen a lot of people basically say the same thing, but it feels like Gambit is done. Like, Gambit was put in a corner and Bungie just said, it is what it is. Like, they did mention in Witch Queen, and Bungie did overhaul Gambit in Witch Queen. They did do some testing. They did have Gambit Labs where they did test like a different variation of invading. And we streamed that. We did play it. We tried it out and we did like it. It was like a random type of invasion where instead of how it is now, basically you weren't able to time the portal. Invasions were random. So based on the other team's progression, the opposite team's invader would be allowed to invade at a random time. And it was one time throughout the entire match. And I like that. I actually was a fan of that, but I don't think it ever stuck because, one, I don't think enough people played it and enough people shared feedback in a way that was significant enough where it was on Bungie's radar. But yeah, it sounds like Bungie just kind of say, hey, listen, and before anybody goes crazy, we are getting a map. We're getting back the Dreaming City map, which is one that I was asking back for. So I'm happy about that. And we are getting the Lucent Hive and Shadow Legion added to Gambit. So we're getting new enemies in the rotation. So Gambit, it is getting something. But Bungie does mention that not a lot of people have interest in this game. So it's not a mode they're going to be really focusing on and putting a lot of efforts into. So it's kind of like they said that and they just said, here's a new map. Here's a map, a returning map, and here's some new enemies. Have a blast. And you know what? I like Gambit. I know some of y'all like Gambit. I know most of y'all don't like Gambit. I think Gambit is fun. I think Gambit is fun even as it is right now. I don't think there's anything really wrong with the mode. Personally, I think, and this is just my opinion, again, I gotta preface my comments because I know some people might hear this and get triggered because they stepping in the conversation. Anything I say is not to influence anyone else's thoughts or opinions. These are mine, right? But personally, I have always felt like Gambit launched with a lot of hype and people liked Gambit and Gambit saw some evolution. We had Gambit Prime. I was a fan of Gambit Prime, but I think Gambit Prime burned a lot of people because of the way Season of the Drifter just was overall for a lot of people, even though I liked it. for my own personal reasons. But Gambit Prime was the pinnacle of Gambit for me. But it didn't get the reception, it didn't get the feedback it needed for Bungie to see it that way, because a lot of people just didn't like Gambit at that time, right? They didn't like the mode. Gambit Prime didn't roll out properly, in my opinion. It didn't onboard players properly, in my opinion, with the armor sets and stuff. It did, in my opinion, and I'm kind of getting sidetracked, but in my opinion, Gambit Prime should have launched in a way where it locked players to roles and gave them, this is where tutorials come into play, because it was a mode that really needed to be taught to players and it didn't, right? And it ended up just being a lot of like spammy out of band things that triggered a lot of players. You know, you got invaded. It triggered a lot of people, and it left a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And over the years, the same story has kind of just been repeated. Gambit sucks for this reason, invaders, too much heavy ammo. And it was true at a time. It was absolutely true, right? This person with Gallahorn and that was absolutely true at a time. But I feel like players kind of got sour, moved away from the mode. That has always been the narrative that has stuck with Gambit. It's always stuck. It's never gone anywhere. And even to this day, people continue to say the same things. And I personally, because I've stuck with Gambit through the ups and the downs, through Gambit Prime, through people playing, not playing, through the heavy ammo, all that kind of stuff, into its current form, right? And I feel like the narrative has never changed, even though a lot of the things people complain about has changed. But people were burned to the point where they just didn't want to give it a chance anymore. And even if they did, if they got shot by heavy ammo, it was like PTSD. It was like, oh, same shit. And they never tried it again. And I feel like that overall has burned Gambit. People don't even want to try it, because if they even sniff anything that smells the same as what they were experiencing before, nah. And that's just where we are right now. Again, just my opinion, just my own observation. You know, it is what it is. It is what it is. Nothing's going to reverse this. The population of Gambit is what it is. There's nothing that's going to happen unless somebody with a big platform and big influence all of a sudden starts playing Gambit. It's not going to change. It's not going to change. As long as you have people saying that Gambit sucks, it's not going to change. And it is what it is. I own that. I'm cool with that. I'll play Gambit by myself. That's fine. It's fine. That's just the truth of it. You know, it is what it is. I don't think Gambit's never going to get any updates. I don't think that's what they're saying at all. But I think that it's such a low priority that, kind of like how we got it here, it's been years, right? We got the overhaul. Let me not say that. We got the overhaul in Witch Queen, but it's been a long time since the mode overall has seen any adjustments. You know what I mean? Any real like fine tuning, right? We've gotten a big update, right? But no fine tuning in between, if that makes sense. So I don't think we'll see any fine tuning. One thing I will say, last thing on Gambit before we move on, one thing I will say, Gambit has had some of the best weapons in the sandbox. I will say that, like, throughout these years that Gambit has had these weapons and you've been able to focus them and stuff like that, Gambit has always had some of the best weapons in the sandbox. That's one thing that we have had. We pulled y'all in for a little bit. You know what I mean? We have pulled y'all in for a little bit. But yeah, they do mention that we will be getting a new armor set. So we'll be getting a new trial set. And this is a preview of that. And I think it's pretty dope. It's probably going to be animal themed. I don't think all of the classes are going to get the same bear set, but I think it'll be a mix. So we'll see what the other ones look like, but I think it looks dope. I think Trials is one of those modes where you kind of need a new armor set, because it's one of those modes where you actually play and grind for stuff. Like, that's a mode where it's like, okay, yeah, you kind of need to refresh the look of the armor, right? And, you know, it's something that you grind for. That, I'm cool with that. Even Iron Banner sets, even if it's a reprise set, new set, it needs new sets. Then we get to the game security part. I'm not gonna go through this part because I will sit here and literally just nerd out over security shit. All I need to tell y'all is this shit is important. It's not easy. There will never be a day where Bungie just implements some kind of anti-cheat that is gonna stop every cheater. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. So anybody who thinks like, oh man, there's cheaters this weekend, that's gonna happen even with anti-cheat. That's just the reality of it. Because of the speed of which these things are developed and you have to keep up with, why do you think you get updates on your phones, your computers, all these things get security updates? You don't just get one update and that's it. Security's constant, it's constant. So this is not like a one-time fix where it's like, Bungie, implement this and just fix it. That's never gonna happen. So the only thing I would say about this part is set proper expectations, because you're gonna get cheaters from time to time. Stability updates, this is another one that's dear to my heart because I feel for this, but more resources are going into that stuff. Game stability, server stability, all that kind of stuff. So this is a preview of what's to come. So they talk about quality of life things. We're going to be getting the ability to favorite shaders. Love that. The next one, huge dub. The aspects and fragments for stasis are going to be available from LC Bray on Europa starting next season. Then there was this one. So they added the resources tab to collections. And when I read this as they're basically adding resources to the collections tab as a means for people to know what they are and where to find them, and it's kind of like a codex, right? To give you a sense of what this thing is, which if they're adding things like this, I just want to add, this will be great to also add for characters, locations, events, like major events in the Destiny timeline. Just add this shit to collections too. Just make collections a codex. This could be a huge resource. I feel like the collections tab is a very underutilized aspect of this game. It can be used in a way better way as a codex, because if we can start pointing people like, newer players, like, I don't know what this is. Oh, check your collections tab, take a look, and it tells you exactly, what it is. So that's a good change. We're getting new Strand Aspects, which I feel like is another thing that was completely overshadowed, by a lot of the other points that people were focused on. But we're getting new Strand Aspects next season. We're gonna be getting the Whirlwind Maelstrom for Hunter. We're gonna be getting the Banner of War for Titans. And we're gonna be getting Weave Walk for Warlocks. So we obviously don't know what any of these do. We don't know what they look like or whatever, but these are going to be shown off to us a little bit closer to the launch of the season. They also mentioned some exotic armor reworks, part 2, because we did get some reworks already. But they mentioned underutilized exotic armor pieces that are also going to be getting looked at. And that's going to be in season 22. So everything I'm mentioning to you right now is coming next season. They mentioned new weapon subfamilies coming. So this is looking further into the future. We'll be introducing some entirely new weapon subfamilies with the final shade. Tune into the showcase on August 22nd to get your first look at some of these in action, as well as some other unexpected additions to Destiny 2's arsenal yet to come. This is the stuff I was talking about next season, about the range stuff. The substantial shakeup to weapons in season 22 in the form of decoupling damage fall off from range. They said they're going to share more details in an upcoming weapon balance article, but for now, these are just their high-level goals. So the whole goal of some of the changes that are coming is to reduce the variance between the optimal engagement ranges of mid-range weapons, so auto rifles, pulse rifles, and hand cannons, and also slightly reduce the average engagement range in Crucible by pulling in the maximum damage fall-off distances of many weapons. To do this, the highest achievable damage fall-off range on almost all weapons will be reduced to some extent, with certain weapons being reduced more than others. And then in many cases, the lower edge of their damage fall-off ranges will be coming up. So like I mentioned, they're compressing it. So the higher end is coming down, the lower end is coming up. They're compressing the ranges that weapons can reach for damage fall-off. Damage fall-off meaning when you start losing damage, right? For anybody who doesn't know, your weapon loses damage at certain ranges, right? And it performs optimally, meaning it does its most damage within a certain range. Keep in mind, even with their damage fall-off values, start values being similar, weapons will perform differently once their damage fall-off begins. As they currently do in the live game, rifle-style weapons will experience fall-off more gradually, right? So it's a curve. It's not like a drastic fall-off. while handheld ones will experience it more quickly. That will be more drastic, like hand cannons and stuff. But the differences should be less extreme. We've also hand-tuned a small list of exotics and all special weapons with the intention of keeping them near where they are in the live game, as opposed to allowing them to receive outsized buffs or nerfs with these overarching changes. They're talking about the range stuff, by the way. We'll share all the info on that in the upcoming weapons preview article as well. In addition, we have a lot of other things to look forward to in Season 22. This is not a comprehensive list, but wanted to give you a sneak peek. Hand cannons will see increased reload speeds and PvE damage buffs against minor and major enemies. Huge PvE change for hand cannons. All my Fatebringer lovers, posterity from Deepstone Crypt, shit, somebody remind me, what's the hand cannon called in Kingsfall? I just said Kingsfall is our raid, and I forgot the damn name of the hand cannon from Kingsfall. That's terrible. But I love that hand cannon, even though I can't remember the name of it. Zaoli's Bane. Zaoli's Bane. Anybody who loves those hand cannons, hand cannon buff. Huge PvE buffs. Can't wait. Also, Touch of Malice is getting some tweaks that they think they will enjoy. So we can speculate, what do you guys think those buffs are gonna be? I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's gonna get some kind of damage buff. Maybe its own individual buffs, because I'm pretty sure they don't want to buff scouts. And I don't think they'll buff it a lot, like to be potent in PvP. I don't think they'll do that. But even if they did, I think that the perk itself would counter it, so it would kind of balance out. But who knows? We'll see. Maybe they will buff it and it'll be fun as shit in PvP. It'll be busted and we'll have a good time. But I think in PvE, there's some things they could do. Like, I know that the blight is like a debuff. Maybe they buff the debuff that we get from the blight, something like that. Maybe it'll have a fun interaction with a subclass or something like that. Like, who knows? You know what I mean? Like, who knows? We'll see. But yeah, they also go on to mention that perks like Bipod, Envious Assassin, and Under Over, I actually missed that one, are going to become much more useful in Season 22. So again, more things to look for next season. Think about all the things we just discussed and think about how many things I just mentioned that are coming in Season 22. New maps, reprise maps, new modes, new weapons, sandbox stuff, quality of life changes, matchmaking updates, security updates, stability updates, and we're pretty much at the end of the article. But when you look at the entire article in its entirety, aside from the gripes that we have, that we went into detail on and talked about, I cannot sit here and say we are getting nothing. Our feedback is not being heard. You know what I'm saying? I can't say that because it's not true. I can't not acknowledge the work that's being done, right? And say that nothing is being done because it's not true. It's okay to say, hey, good job. I like this change. This is great. We're getting this. But hey, Bungie, I have a concern about this. That's what we just sat up here and we did for this last hour and a half, right? But I feel like that's not what happens, right? For various different reasons. And again, I'm gonna repeat this again. That's my opinion. That's how I handle things, right? This is how I handle my relationship with the game, and vice versa. That's just me. Yo, Senpai, appreciate the follow. Welcome in. But you know what I'm saying? Like, that's just me. That's just me. So at the end of the day, wherever you fall on this, however you feel about it, it is what it is, but we'll see. I laid out the things that are coming next season. We'll see how everything plays out. The main thing I did want to talk about was the narrative stuff very quickly. But basically they mentioned, and this is what we were talking about a little bit in the Discord. Personally, I'm a fan of seeing the story play out over the course of the year. So that means starting off in the DLC content and then spanning the entire year throughout the season. I'm a fan of that. But I do want to see it refined in terms of how it's delivered. I mentioned that for Season of the Deep, wasn't the biggest fan of spending 5 minutes to get 2 seconds of dialogue. It really didn't get substantial until the later half. And I understand build up is necessary, but the delivery felt off. The pacing of it felt off. But when I take a step back and I look at where we ended up with the Witness Origins. I look at the Veil Containments. Looking at it that way, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with getting story because for me, it keeps me interested throughout the entire year to follow the narrative, right? A big thing for me, even with Witch Queen, was we played, and people don't acknowledge this stuff, right? But this is just the truth, at least my truth, at least what I saw and I observed. When you played Witch Queen, it was amazing. Campaign, awesome. After that, I didn't really go back to the Throne World much throughout the year. I didn't really visit the Throne World for anything. There was nothing else to go there for. No story stuff, nothing. There was no reason to. Seasons didn't have anything to do with it. And it was really just a matter of seeing how the seasons were gonna lead into Lightfall. It was like, okay, how are we gonna get to Lightfall? It was no real like narrative string that was pulled throughout Witch Queen. It was kind of like, okay, cool, Witch Queen done. I mean, if you want to play the season, sure, but like wait till the next year. I'm not a fan of that personally. I'm a fan of, okay, Lightfall starts, leave me with something to go, oh shit, word, and then pull throughout the year. I'm not in any way saying that the Lightfall campaign was perfect. It had its own issues, you know, in itself. Character motivations were not established, you know, character relationships were not built up, you know, there was not enough there for me to build up an emotional connection to certain characters for us to lose someone like Rohan and for me to feel something. I felt nothing. You know what I mean? So like things like that needs to be looked at. Maybe something like Rohan's death is something that you do later on down the seasons. You know what I mean? Give us time to build up relationships with these characters. Imagine if Rohan was still here for a second, right, chat? Imagine we go through Lightfall, and I'm twisting the story up now because obviously he died for a main part of the story, but let's just say he did not die, right? Let's just say his story played out exactly the same way, but he did not die. And we go throughout this whole year, right? We get the Veil Containment lores, and we get, you know, some other missions with Nimbus and, you know, Rohan, you know, just dialogue, right? And we revisit those characters. Let's say season 23 comes out, for example, and we get a mission before Veil Containment, and Rohan dies. That would be impactful. You know why? Because we had time to spend with these characters. I had a little bit more time. I experienced the campaign with them. I experienced stories with them. So I had time to establish that relationship, but that's just one example. They do go on to say right here that they put it in bold text too. The final shape and its raid will provide a climactic conclusion to the Light and Darkness saga before we look ahead to what comes next in Destiny 2. So that just translates to when you finish the campaign for Final Shape, you'll know exactly what the hell is going on. Everything will be done, right? And then we'll move on from there. I don't know about you, Chad, but I don't want to put any negativity in the air, but I just want to point this out. Destiny campaigns don't tend to be that long. So if the Final Shape campaign itself, in addition to its raid, is going to conclude the entire Light and Dark saga, that campaign and raid needs to be the most substantial campaign Destiny has ever done. Ever. Like, more than Witch Queen. We all love Witch Queen. It needs to be even, because it has to tie up so much. It needs to explain so much. So again, I'm not trying to put any negativity out there, but I just wanted to point that out. That's a lot to put on the campaign and the raid, but we'll see. Because if they can deliver, it will literally be the best campaign experience, raid experience we have ever experienced in Destiny history. Because it has to be. You're concluding 9 years of storytelling. And then I'm assuming that the seasonal content is going to push us into the future. So Final Shape, it's gonna be wild. It's gonna be wild. One of the things they mentioned here, we're going to be getting the exotic mission Rotator, starting off with the Presage mission. And also, Dead Man's Tale is going to be craftable now. Oh, and then the most important thing we almost forgot about. In-game LFG is coming in Season 23. But yeah, that is essentially the whole blog post. And I know I missed a lot of comments, but I appreciate y'all just sitting here letting me blab and just talk about this whole thing. I hope it was a good discussion. I feel like we're mostly on the same page. And again, if people disagree, it's totally fine. Like, you can disagree with every word I just said. Not a problem. Just sharing opinion.